I can't believe we're here. This is episode 150 of the Autism Outreach Podcast. And I just want to say thank you for tuning in and listening each and every week, all about autism and communication. I never thought that when I started my podcast in my walk-in closet that we would still be going and having new episodes each and every week, all about autism and communication. This is a bright spot for me to be able to connect with you each week. And I hope that it is helpful information for you as well. Make sure that if it is, you leave a review and let me know wherever you listen to podcasts. Today on episode 150, to celebrate this milestone, I'm bringing back one of your favorite guests, my friend, my mentor, my colleague, Dr. Mary Barbera. Today we are talking about where should we start if our child is not yet speaking? And she has a really cool resource that is new, that is available at no cost, that is going to help you develop a plan going forward. And I can't wait for us to start this milestone episode. Welcome to number 150 of the Autism Outreach Podcast.
You're listening to Autism Outreach Podcast, a podcast full of ready-to-use strategies to help those with autism strengthen their communication skills. Here's your host, Rose Griffin of ABA Speech, a speech therapist and board-certified behavior analyst who shares tips you can use in your next therapy session.
Welcome to episode 150 of the Autism Outreach Podcast. Thank you very much. I have brought back one of my good friends, colleagues, mentors, and one of your favorite guests, Dr. Mary Barbera. Thank you so much, Mary, for coming back on. It's great to see you.
Yeah, it's awesome to see you. And it's always good to catch up with you, Rose. And I know my audience and your audience is pretty similar in a lot of ways. And thank you for always willing to collaborate and help spread the word, whatever our messages are. It's really a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. And our friendship started about 6 years ago when I think I saw one of your Facebook ads, Mary. That's how it started, and it was for your courses. And you were talking about a lot of the same things that I talk about. Different audience. I feel like, you're talking to parents a little bit more. And I emailed you and I said, hey, I'm Rose Griffin and I talk about all these same things. And I took your courses, have been in your community. And then we just became friends. And we actually got to meet in San Diego. That was really fun. I feel like that solidifies a friendship when you get to meet in real life. And so that was really fun. But for those of us that are new to you and your work, can you just tell us a little bit about kind of how you got into the autism world and kind of your journey of what you've been sharing and disseminating? It's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, sure. So I have a master's degree in nursing. So I was a nurse and a nurse manager down in Philadelphia area. And when we moved back to my hometown of Reading, Pennsylvania, my husband had just graduated with from his residency in emergency medicine, and we moved back to my area. I was 9 months pregnant with Lucas, really thinking at that point that I would have a few kids and take some time off from work, have a few kids. And then my idea was to go back into the nursing field, get a PhD, because in the nursing field, I had done research and presentations on really OBM topics, organizational behavior management. I didn't know what that was. I didn't know what ABA was, but all of my work was in nursing administration. So shift to shift report and time management and nursing retention. Those were my big areas. Anyway, I had Lucas in July of 1996, had Spencer 18 months later. And in the process, Lucas started to regress and was diagnosed with autism the day before he was 3 with moderate to severe autism. But my husband, who's a physician, first mentioned the possibility of autism when Lucas was just 21 months of age. I told him it wasn't autism. And then I never, ever wanted to hear the word autism again. I shut him down for like a good 9 months to another year. It was a long time. And when he was finally diagnosed, he was diagnosed with moderate to severe autism, even though he had gone to a 2-year-old preschool by himself, then was diagnosed, repeated the 2-year-old preschool with a shadow. But right in between there, he had been going to preschool by himself, was saying some words, although I didn't know how to get him to say more words or anything about how I was going to teach him anything. But, both my husband and I were a little shocked by that because, looking at this 2-year-old that was going to preschool by himself, wasn't aggressive, wasn't self-stimulatory behavior, wasn't really a thing. He was just kind of plodding along. And so when we got that moderate severe autism, I think it shocked us both a little bit. Mm-hmm. And then I was like, oh, but we can, help him. I had read, some books and he was like, well, maybe if it was very mild, and he didn't say, like, if you would have got him in here at 21 months, mm-hmm. but now we're talking he's 36 months old. Mm-hmm. And so he was not too optimistic, but he was very, very solid in his, you need ABA, he needs a good program. Mm-hmm. That's where you start. And so I felt extra guilt by that waiting and mm-hmm. denial period. Mm-hmm. So then it really all kind of snowballed into, we started ABA. I was a therapist for 5 hours a week. I really enjoyed it. I was a neuro nurse, so it made sense. I was a nurse manager. So hiring, firing, training, all that came supernatural. Potty training, feeding, all the things that neurologically impaired patients, it just really, it seemed like everything in my background set mm-hmm. me up to kind of hit the ground running. And I was determined, especially because I was feeling extra guilty, that I was going to do all I could. Mm-hmm. Even though he was 3, it wasn't too late. And I was just going to put my all into it. And then fast forward, became a behavior analyst in 2003, wrote 2 best-selling books. My first book, The Verbal Behavior Approach, is in 17 languages. I've traveled around the world speaking on autism. And then earned a PhD in leadership in 2011. People are like, okay, what are you going to do now? And I was like, are you going to teach at a college? No, I'm going to figure out how to get my message online. Because I was going door to door with little kids at that point. I was, for 7 years, I was the lead behavior analyst for the Pennsylvania Verbal Behavior Project, which is now the Patent Autism ABA Supports Initiative. So I was really in deep with schools and teachers and SLPs and OTs and paraprofessionals. And then I left the project and worked with early intervention. So really my passion then and now has been to get to those moms and early intervention professionals mm-hmm. to start to turn things around before an autism diagnosis or after an autism diagnosis. Because now, as you know, Rose, the wait lists are horrendous for an evaluation. There's so much you can do. All the child-friendly strategies that I write about and that I promote are all great for any child, mm-hmm. And any speech delay child, any typically developing child, or a child with autism. So then became an online marketer, started my first course in 2015. I've had thousands of parents and professionals from over 100 countries take my courses. And then in 2021, wrote my Hay House book, Turn Autism Around, which the subject line is an action guide for parents of young children with early signs of autism. And it's basically my toddler course summarized in a book. And, it's really important that we get to parents as early as possible, get to that state I was in at 21 months when my husband first mentioned it. And it was back in the 90s, there was no mm-hmm. internet, there was no Facebook, there was no, now there is, but now instead of being 1 in 500 kids affected, it's 1 in, 1 in 36. Mm-hmm. And so now the stigma is pretty much gone, but the rates are so high that there's waiting lists, and it's just a confusing mess for people. But I feel like what I'm really, but I have a school age program too, because you don't want to leave out kids that are 12 or 8 or 6 that have never had good ABA. Those kids need help too. So now I have 2 offerings. I have the toddler course, preschooler course, kids 1 to 5 with or without a diagnosis. About half the people don't even have a diagnosis that join that community. And for parents and professionals of 6 years plus. Then everybody after 60 days would go to the verbal behavior bundle offer, which is the course you took and that I was creating back 6-7 years ago.
Right. Oh, fun. Now, how did you know that? How did you know you wanted to take your course online? Well, you were doing a lot of presenting at conferences. Is that correct? Or doing a lot of in-person presentations? And then how did you get the idea to go online? Because that's definitely where I met you, is in the online space, because I too have an online business. And I started my business in 2017. So I probably, we're kind of in the same orbit. Well, that was what was so funny, is when I moved down to Austin, Texas, when I got married, moved to Austin, Texas, took this job in Leander ISD and started working as an autism facilitator. And they said, oh, they use verbal behavior. This is what they said in this district. And so I hadn't heard of that. So I remember I went down to the UT library and I got your book out and I read it. And it's just really funny. I was like, oh yeah, this makes a lot of sense. Because I already had, learned a lot about ABA. So it's just kind of like icing on the cake. So funny how things work out. But how did you know that you wanted to do online? Did somebody urge you? Was it somebody's idea? Were you taking courses online about how to do a course?
I was, but I think one of the very first things I saw, and it was like Oprah or Dr. Phil or something like that. Yeah. It was Brendon Burchard popped up on the screen. So it was like the first Skype or whatever. And he said, it wasn't autism, but it was something like seizures or, some child disability for this mom or this group of moms. And he's like, you are so, gung-ho or whatever. I'm going to give you a $10,000 consult to get your message out to the world online. And he wrote a book called The Millionaire Messenger. And it's Brendon Burchard. And it's a really great book. And it basically says, if you want to spread your message to millions of people, you need to make millions of dollars in order to do that. And that was kind of my first, it was like I was watching TV and I'm like, wait, what?
It's about me.
And you think about the timing, 2010, 2011, like nothing was really online.
Right.
So, and then I started following people like him, and then Jeff Walker, and then Amy Porterfield, and Pat Flynn. And yes, I've taken a ton of courses. I've invested a ton of money in educating myself on how to do this. Because like, Rose, we don't know how to put on a webinar. We don't know how to do an email sequence. We don't know how to run a podcast, but there's courses that is extra motivating, because you're like, anything, Marie Forleo, another online entrepreneur, she says everything is figure outable. And so like we know as behavior analysts, I mean, it's kind of like what we do. And you break it down and you teach yourself, or you get training or have somebody teach you, and you keep, making progress. And if something doesn't work or you don't like it or doesn't light you up, you stop it. And so so that's how it all began.
Love it. And now you're doing just such amazing work. So I think the one question that we get asked a lot here, and actually I just had someone email me this week and say, hey, my granddaughter is 3 and I don't know if she has a speech delay or she has autism. What can I do? And, and I have resources and I shared with her, but what steps should parents take if their child isn't talking or they suspect that their child has autism? Because, like as a grandma, this, maybe she's just watching her granddaughter and maybe she's afraid to say something. People get all kind of funny about stuff, right? They don't want to bring it up, and they never talk about it. And I think something's going on there. You know how family dynamics are. But if somebody kind of wants to get things going and to help their child and they're worried about them, what are some steps that you suggest?
Yeah. So is it speech delay or autism? I have a 10-minute video on YouTube that is by far, like hands down, 10 times more popular than any post I've ever done. It has over 1.5 million views. All of my YouTube videos combined have 8 million views. So this is like by far the best video. And basically what I say is, I give like chapter 2 of Turn Autism Around is about some of the signs you might see. But like in the end, it doesn't matter.
Right.
It's the same procedures that you would do to help a child with speech delay or help a child with autism or signs of autism. And so you just break it down. The Turn Autism Around approach is a 4-step procedure. It's assess, plan, implement or teach, and evaluate using easy data. And the reason those 4 steps absolutely work, is because it's the scientific method.
Right.
It's just like anything. You have a problem, you assess, you make a plan, you intervene, and you assess using easy data. And it's this constant loop. So, I think it's a matter of assessing, like, basically, if the child's not talking or just talking in one-word utterances and they're 2 or 3, then obviously that's a problem. You can get that on, the CDC milestones or whatever, like that is a clear delay in expressive language. But when we're looking at, is it autism? How is their receptive language? What are they saying? Are they using those words as commands or requests? Or are they labeling, or are they scripting? And, I am guilty of counting words, grasping at straws, like E-I-E-I-O. Oh, there's 5 words. No, that's not 5 words, So we need to look at receptive language. We need to look at whether they're pointing, if they're young, like 3 and pointing is not something to write home about. But if they're 18 months or 2, the child who's not pointing, not showing, not having joint attention is going to be more at risk, obviously. I'm also have a big interest in feeding, sleeping, potty training, maybe from my nursing background, maybe from my mom background. But, I learned while I was writing Turn Autism Around from Dr. Keith Williams, who's been on my show, who's amazing. He's a behavior analyst and an international feeding expert, is that a 2019 study showed that kids with feeding issues are much more likely to get a diagnosis of autism than a toddler without feeding issues. That's in a chapter, in the feeding chapter of my book, for instance. So I would look at pointing, I would look at receptive language, I would look at imitation, obviously, social play skills, feeding issues, and whether they're excessively tantruming, and in the end, nobody has a crystal ball to look forward or backwards, but we can intervene by taking the assessment and, taking one of your courses, taking one of my courses. And even listening to podcasts and reading books is good, except for I will say that lately I've been kind of on a mission to get out of the sea of free for parents and professionals.
Right.
Because you can, for instance, last fall, I was offering my course and I had this woman come to a Q&A, should she buy the course? So she gets on a Zoom thing, she pops up and she goes, I've listened to every single one of your podcasts. And I'm like, oh my God, a lot of time.
Right.
And, I have a 5-year-old and he has autism and he's not talking and he's not this and he's not that. And I'm like, you have to join the course, right?
Right.
Joined the course. She progressed to the VB bundle. She progressed to my train the trainer. She took my 5-day, she's all in, right? But as I'm and the child's making progress.
Right.
But as I'm calculating, this is episode 150 for you, which is amazing. I'm at 240 now.
Right.
Back in the fall, I was 200 episodes. That's 160 hours of podcasts.
Wow.
No one has that kind of time.
Right.
You need information, but you need curated content. And you and I are very similar in our procedures that are child friendly, that are based on BCBA, that are broken down, that we have support, but can you think of like 100 people offering autism information and how people can get into a swirly mess of just consuming free content?
Yeah, it's too much. And I think having a course, we have Start Communicating Today. That's our younger course. Is just, it gives you actionable, that's what I always say, actionable tips and strategies that you can use in your next therapy session. But it's true because it's condensed and it's meant for you to take action. And when you take one of our courses, you get access for 3 months initially. You can have continued access. But we do that because and here in the online space, they say, well, when you have skin in the game, it's like when you've spent money on something, you're going to finish it. I just purchased a course about LinkedIn strategy because it is a social media and I'm over there every single day by this guy, Justin Welsh. And it was really fascinating. I still love to be a student in those types of things, but I'm very motivated, even on a Sunday, to finish that course because I paid $97 for it. So I'm going to finish it and I'm going to then take action. I think that is what is hard for people. And that's kind of like, we kind of have different audiences where I feel like you speak more to parents, but sometimes some of your parents will hit me up on my email and want to do consults. They might be living in another country and they may have a specialized program, but maybe they're not trained in autism. And so I kind of help them that further step of, they've already done the VB map. They already have the specialized services. They really just want someone to talk to. So I think parents are kind of all over. I just talked to another parent this week who, I don't know if she's taken your stuff. Her child is conversational and things, general education classes, but she has administered the VB map and she takes courses through BDS. So every parent is kind of in their own path. I think that's what's nice about your book, Turn Autism Around, is it just give you that, like, here's a assessment you can use. This is how you can get started. Because I know you said you worked in the public schools, and I really do I'm actually going back to be a public school speech therapist, just 2.5 days a week. I don't have to tell you about that. I'm just here in my hometown, but I do believe in the power of public education, but it really just depends, and the thing with, I just had Lori Unum on the podcast and we talked about insurance and how now ABA is covered. But I think what's hard about that is you'll see there's staffing changes, just like you said, that all your management skills came when you were putting together your ABA program, because it's hard, right? There's staffing changes and there is more access, but then with that comes other difficulties. Would you agree with that statement?
Yeah. I mean, every day we get emails and comments. How can we find somebody that knows Mary's approach? And it's like, thousands of people have taken my courses, or read the books or whatever. But I just started doing a teeny bit of one-to-one coaching, 3-hour sessions. Yeah. 3-hour sessions.
We'll have to catch up.
all 3 of them have been people that have parents who have taken my courses and want my view of what's going on. Yeah. Because it's not just talking. It's tantrums, it's potty, it's feeding, it's advocacy, it's IEP goals, it's working with the team. So getting back to your, team and turnover, we get a lot of, the RBT showed up. She didn't know anything. She didn't know anything about whatever, or an SLP who's coming once a week. And I feel like she's not on the same page. So one of these consults, they said that about the SLP and the RBT. And I'm like, if somebody shows up to your door with a smile on your face and they're open to learning, do not kick them to the curb.
No.
You have invested time and money to learn the child-friendly strategies. You know what works for your child. This isn't consultation. This is coaching. So even when we answer questions in our online course and community, it's watch this video. You need to apply it to Johnny. We can't tell you exactly what to do with Johnny. We're not going to. But you need local providers. I'm sorry you have to train them. I'm sorry you have to sit down with them at the table and show them how to do the shoebox and potato head and show the speech therapist, what to do. But I just talked to the mom that I did the last one-to-one call with, and she was having a problem with the SLP not being on the same page. And I was like, this child has articulation issues. You need an SLP.
Right.
I am horrible at hearing sounds or knowing where the tongue goes. Like
Complicated.
It's not my wheelhouse.
Right.
But she's there. She's being paid by somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Get her into I have this kind of layman's number 2 word list to number 1 word list.
Oh,
number
right.
1 word list is like all clearly articulated. You could,
Mm-hmm.
without looking at the picture, you could know that that's clearly a word. We all agree. Have her help you get the number 2 words into number 1 words.
Right.
Have her say, well, you know what? I had a little boy, Chino, that I use in my videos, an old client, and he could say Cheeto, but he couldn't say Chino. He could say Cheeto and no. Well, it doesn't take a rocket scientist or a speech pathologist to go like, there's no reason he shouldn't be able to say Chino. But how many speech pathologists and behavior analysts, that's why I love, the combination of the certifications that you have, because there is real magic when you can have a team that gets on the same page, that is all moving forward. Like, it's not about who's right and who's wrong and whose ego. It's about the child and about the way the child learns. And if you figure out that he learns this way with the shoebox or potato head, or he learns best by focusing on 3 words on the number 2 list to pull over to clearly articulated words, like whatever system, like we just teach you how to fish, but you need local providers too, especially if the child has autism and is in ABA programming or even just speech therapy. Like, you can't afford, I've heard stories where, parents driving the child 70 minutes away to a speech pathologist who insists that the parent wait in the waiting room, even though the child is screaming going down the hallway. I'm like,
no.
What universe would this be appropriate? Like, you know what I mean? And so we really coach parents and professionals. Like, I give CEUs for behavior analysts, obviously not for SLPs, but get on the same page. But the parent has the most vested interest. They're going to be long term. And in my book, I call them the captain of the ship. And really, as professionals, I think we need to empower parents. Not every parent wants to be the captain of the ship, maybe doesn't have what it takes to be the captain of the ship, just because they have other variables going on in their life. But those that want to be, let's just have them lead.
Yeah, I love that. And it is about that collaboration piece, us all working together. And it is hard. And, if somebody comes into your home and they're not sure of what to do, it might just be, it's probably a training issue, within their organization. Like you said, it's like great to have these online courses, but obviously the providers, right? The boots on the ground, the people in the trenches, that's really important. And what I always try to think too, as somebody who does a lot of trainings, is I'm helping this one person, or when I was in the schools, and it's like, I'm working with this one parapro right now with this one student. Well, this person might be a parapro for their whole career. So they're going to touch many lives, right, of autistic individuals. So the work that I do now is going to help so many kids that you won't even see that. And so I know that's really hard as a parent, because being a parent, just of typical children, it's just exhausting to be a parent and to work and all the things that we do. But it's probably, trying to get into that mindset of, you may have to help train this person. And really, parents are their child's best advocate. I mean, they really are. And I think, if they can have that positive tone with providers, just like you said, don't throw somebody out of your house. If they show up with a smile on time and they are willing to help, do not do it. Although some people have a bias against, especially speech therapists. There are a lot of anti-ABA sentiment out there. So, but they may not think that way. They may say like, oh, this is really great. These parents seem great. And so I always try to disseminate and share about how we can have more child-led positive therapy. So I know that you do that too. Such good information. Anything else you want to share about your work, or where people could find out more about you, or more about the process that you want to share?
Yeah, I do have something newer the past year. So I've taken page 49, I think, of my Turn Autism Around book, which is the 1-page assessment that I developed like 18, 20 years ago in some fashion. It's actually a 5-page appendix in my first book, and it's a 1-page handout in my second book. So because I'm in an online mastermind group and big thinkers there, all not autism, just very big thinkers, a few of them have invested in software programs. And I was like, I want some software. So I hired a software company, and we took the one-page assessment and we made it into a digital assessment. And it takes 10 minutes to complete. It's at marybarbera.com/assessment. I said it was going to be free for the first 1,000 people. I think 25,000 people have taken it.
Wow.
It's mostly for parents, and I have all the data. I haven't done anything really to analyze the data yet, although I'm learning along the way how to make improvements in this. But it basically, once you take 10 minutes and go to that assessment, it's still free. You will get the one-page printout to your email. So some of the really, and then you'll get scores in 3 areas: self-care and daily activities, eating, sleeping, potty, grooming, and dressing. You'll get a score in language and learning, language, imitation, social, and you'll get a score in problem behaviors. And the scores, typically developing kids with no diagnosis, no major issues, will score near 100% by the age of 3. They'll be conversational. They won't have major tantrums, and they'll be potty trained and learning to dress themselves and that sort of thing. We have seen a lot of really interesting findings just in the pre and post for kids. We're able to take the one-page assessment and kind of backtrack it into what the graph would look like. Of course, that's not valid research. However, it is very interesting. Like, we have a little boy, his mom was on my podcast. His name is Santiago. And he just had a severe speech delay diagnosis. She was trying to get him diagnosed with autism, trying to get him evaluated. And each time they said, no, it's just a speech delay. So his speech score started out at like 20%, and his other scores were like 60, 70. We say like 85% better is like, no, not my course. Like, doesn't mean you're free and clear and but his scores in self-care and in problem behaviors were good, were decent. And anyway, now he's all caught up. And he's fully conversational. Is starting to be bilingual, and he's only just turned 4. So we're seeing a lot of really good pre and post situations going on, and it's kind of like reading an EKG. Like, if I can see your scores and I can see your age, and I can actually see the assessment, see why your scores are bad in certain areas, I can pretty much tell a lot. And then we teach parents and professionals how to take the digital assessment printout and turn it into a plan, which is covered in my book and my courses. But I'm really excited about the digital assessment. It's some little silly opt-in. It's like, I've invested a ton of money, and I really do think that this isn't about, you don't have to use the Turn Autism Around approach.
Right.
You take a pre-assess. It's very, it really scores the same things that the BB map scores with the self-care checklist, with the transition assessment, with the barriers assessment, all in a very easy 10-minute way.
That's nice.
Yeah. So I'm
nice.
really excited about that. So marybarbera.com/assessment. You could do it pre and post with whatever intervention you're doing. But I'm seeing a lot of potential, like even maybe in the future, like a research arm of my organization. Research studies, I'm open to these things. It's just, I'm a little underwater right now. Somebody came to me and was like, I want to do major research on approach with your assessment. I'm going to be like, okay, well, maybe.
Yeah. So when people they take the assessment, then they get the results in an email, and then do you have like guidance that information that will help them turn that into a plan then.
In the course, yes.
In the course. Okay.
And in the book.
Yes. Okay.
Turn it into a plan. But again, I think you'd be better off if I had a child with, scores 50%.
Right.
In all three areas. Like, I don't think there's enough free information and enough book reading that's going to really, and we're not talking, even the whole title of my program, my books, Turn Autism. What do you mean Turn Autism? We just want to help each child reach their fullest potential and be as safe, as independent, and as happy as possible.
Yes.
With or without a diagnosis of autism. This is about helping turn things around, like whatever that means. We do have kids like Santiago who caught all the way up, with his speech delay. We also have kids like Michelle C., who's in my book. I did a white paper on her. I published it with Rick Bina, marybarbera.com/white paper. She caught all the way up too. And she had a diagnosis of autism during COVID and took my course and turned things completely around. Went from that white paper is actually really interesting, I think, for speech and language pathologists.
Yeah.
In my course, I have people do a baseline assessment. And so language sample, you can set a timer for 10, 15, 30, or an hour. She set it for an hour. Elena's mom, Michelle, got 2 words in 1 hour before she started the course. Did my toddler course. It only took her 33 days instead of 60. At the end, we do the language sample again. We recommend it.
Yeah.
Set timer for an hour, went from 2 words to 180 words and phrases with contractions, prepositions, pronoun. Like, it just unleashed. Now, she had no other therapy. She had no therapy. Everything was shut down for COVID. She was a stay-at-home mom with a newborn and a 2-year-old with a diagnosis. So,
well,
was that the course? I think it was. But we tried to actually get the white paper published in peer-reviewed journals. But it's a case study design. But the other really interesting thing for speech pathologists is she also had standardized speech scores. And right before, like within a month.
Right.
On the Rossetti, her, what do they call it? Base or basal level?
Yeah.
Was 0 to 3 month old.
Oh, I just did a Rossetti report last night, so I know what you're talking about. That's
in
low.
The white paper, you can actually see her standardized score. That was the lowest, right?
Wow.
And then, so she was 23 months old. She started the course. She was 24 months old with the 2 words in an hour. 26 months of age, she had the 180 words and phrases and contractions and everything. They did more standardized speech testing, but not the Rossetti again. Have been appropriate. They did 3 other things, and her highest expressive language, she was 26 months of age, was 30 months. So I thought and I had the actual Excel sheets, and this mom is so on the ball. She works for me now.
Yeah, okay.
So on the ball. But I thought a case study design during COVID, when everything was shut down, with these pre-Rossetti and language sample and post, I thought maybe I had a shot at a peer review.
No.
But anyway,
it's a white paper. I'm going to check that out. I don't think I've actually read the whole thing. So, but now I've been giving the Rossetti. I'm licensed in Washington State. That's actually been fun for me. And anyway, they have this neat program in Washington State. For 12 weeks, the kids, if they qualify, they get ABA and speech therapy. So sometimes I supervise the SLPA, who's actually also a BCBA, which is very neat. Or sometimes we provide the direct therapy, my company does. But it's a really neat program. But I've been getting used to like the Rossetti, which actually I think is a really nice speech therapy assessment. It is
and
nice.
you could use my digital assessment at the same time. You could work with the family to do that. And it's 2, and then you get scores, to compare. And the scores I've seen do compare to standardized testing, EB map, to child development, the levels. So I am excited about the potential of where this could go. So
that's great. And I think it just gives them a starting point. Like they might be worried about something or thinking about something, and then they can take this and then make a plan and decide it helps them take action. I think that's what my courses do, and what your membership and courses do, is it just helps people take action, right? So I think that
if you
is
have
really
to wait
exciting.
for an SLP to come and do a Rossetti and then for the report, or if you have a child who's talking, like doing a BB map is no easy walk in the park.
No.
So like 10 minutes, you could do it right this second. It isn't just for professionals though. Like I think if a professional is listening and wants to do it, they should involve the family, and they should get together like on Zoom or something, so that it's accurate, because there are questions about potty and sleep and things that you might not know as an SLP for this child.
Looks at the whole child. I love it. It's great. So if people want to learn more about you, your work, all the cool stuff that we talked about today, where can they find out about you?
MaryBarbera.com is a great place to start. I have a new resource section at the top. I have a work with me section at the top. I have, the digital assessment is right there on the homepage. Or if you're out and about and you're having a problem with a family in denial, or a child with pica, or a child with apraxia, or whatever, you can always search Mary Barbera plus the topic, and chances are very high something is going to pop up.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for coming on and helping us celebrate this milestone episode 150. It was great to see you as always.
Thank you, Rose.
Thanks for listening to Autism Outreach. If you enjoyed the show today, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode full of actionable strategies you can use in your therapy room. Write a review too. That would mean so much to me. I always love hearing from you. Have a specific topic that you want included on a future show? Reach out over on Instagram, ABA Speech by Rose, or visit me at www.abaspeech.org.